Good evening, friends, and you're watching Indian Weekender. Do you know if you're unhappy with any government agency or any education institute, then you can approach the Chief Ombudsman to get a resolution of your problem. The Office of Chief Ombudsman is there to help people who are not happy with a decision they have got. Indian Weekender spoke to the Chief Ombudsman, Peter Boshier, to know more about his office and what they do. Do you know 1st October would complete 59 years of this office in practice? Please see what Mr. Boshier has to say. Good morning and welcome to Indian Weekender. How have you been doing?
Well, we've been busy, and it's very good to see you and to be able to do this interview. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, sir. Same here. So to
Good.
begin with, sir, we have been hearing a lot about the position of ombudsman, how it has taken a change for over the years. So just wanted to know how you see this position, being in the position for last years. What is the significance of this position?
Well, it's a good question. It's a very important question, Navdeep. I came here having been a judge in the family court.
Right.
And then I went to the Law Commission for a period. And when I came to be an ombudsman, I was asked by Parliament if I would take on the job. I knew very little about it.
Right.
It's one of 3 offices of Parliament. So the standing and the status that you have is that there's a direct relationship with the Parliament, and that's who I report to.
Right.
So really from a constitutional point of view, it's a very, very important role, and one that I value because of the independence that we have to say what should be said, independent of the views and wishes of the government of the day.
Right. So, but this, this responsibility does come with a lot of responsibilities, as stated in this. So, how do you deal with the pressures that this position comes with?
Yes. Well, look, I've got a very big office now. So I'll just take you back to talk a little bit about how we've developed in the country, if that's all right, because your listening audience might be a bit interested.
Yes.
A long time ago, Scandinavia decided it would have an ombudsman scheme. Ombudsman doesn't mean a man who does something. It's a Scandinavian expression, which is gender neutral, and it means someone who looks into and investigates. That's what ombudsman means. And so Scandinavia developed the idea. We were the first country outside of Scandinavia to develop an ombudsman scheme, and we did this in 1962. Yeah. Probably the most famous of the ombudsman was the first one, Sir Guy Powles. He started with a staff of 16, not many. I now have a staff of about 170, and I have a huge breadth of work. So the answer to your question is, we encourage people to use us. We want to help people. We've got really good ability to do so. And I organise the way I do my work through my staff so that everyone knows what's expected of them, and they know that I want it done as quickly as possible. So the answer to your question is, complaints come in, a lot of them, and we triage these in the office and give them the time as quickly as we can that's needed.
Right. So what is the process if somebody has a grievance against a government agency? Because I don't think a lot of people know the process and how to approach. They have their grievances against immigration or any government agency. So how do you explain the process of approaching the office?
Well, again, it's a good question. One of the reasons I'm pleased to be talking to you and your listeners is because the Ombudsman's been a bit too much of a Wellington institution. It hasn't reached the 4 corners of New Zealand. It hasn't reached, especially the Indian community in New Zealand. It hasn't reached the Pacific community as much as it should have, nor for that matter, Māori. So what we've done is a couple of things. First of all, we have a website, and we deliberately have made that very user-friendly. So if anyone wants to contact us, and you'll see my sign in the background, Ombudsman,
right,
and you put that in, it gives you a website. And we've tried to make that easy for people to use with using their smartphones. So you can go in and, for instance, if you put in Ombudsman Immigration, it will say to you, do you have a question? And you'll say, yes, I want to complain about not being granted a visa. And it will tell you where to go on our website to make a complaint through the website. So that's the first thing.
Right.
The second is we have an 0800 number, and people can ring up on that. And look, we don't stand on ceremony. We accept complaints in all forms. Right. The third thing is we have an info email system. Right. And so let's say that you see a lot of firms and organisations have an info line, state insurance, all that sort of thing. And people can info request us assistance. And what we then do, Navdeep, is we enter it into our case management system, right. And we allocate it to an investigator. The case is assigned a number, right. And we then track that right through in varying stages until we've finished it.
Oh, okay. So over the year, do you think the complaints have increased, or how do you see the complaints from people coming in? What are the agencies that you think are most complaint coming from?
Yes. Well, first of all, the breadth of work that we have done has changed hugely. So most of our work started off being complaints under the Ombudsman Act. And that's one that a lot of your listeners will want to know more about, right. Particularly the immigration complaints that come our way. And I'm just going to mention a couple of those in a second. Right. Then we have an act called the Official Information Act. And that's when people want to know what information an agency holds about something. Right. It could be an issue that really concerns them. It might be Immigration New Zealand. It might be the Department of Customs. Yeah. And let's say that agency or local government, like Auckland City Council, is not giving them the information that they're seeking. Then they can complain to us and ask us if we would review right. the decision that's been made and see if we take a different view. Look, we have other work too. We are appointed by Parliament to monitor the rights of people with disabilities. Okay. And there are many people with disabilities in New Zealand, everything from deaf, blind, autism, right through now to aged care, where people have dementia and they need to be in some form of care. Then the next one we do is all those people who are, I'll say, in detention. And what I mean by that is they could be in prison, they could be in a mental health facility, they could be in a present MIQ place, or they could be in an aged care facility in dementia. So we're asked to make sure that they're being treated humanely. And again, for some of your listeners, that's really important because you don't necessarily know your rights. You don't know what you can ask and what you can expect. Yes. And I have to say, for some of the people who are in Mount Eden in the detention facility because of a breach or a suggested breach of immigration, we haven't felt that their care has been up to an acceptable standard. So you'll see that the number of cases that we do and the sort of complaints, look, it can be everything from bullying in a school and a complaint against unfair, and we recommended that the funding be restored. Again, reasonably recently, we dealt with a case involving students wanting immigration visas, and we found that Immigration New Zealand had not applied the correct approach to considering their application visas. And we directed Immigration New Zealand to do it again and to apologise, which happened. Yeah. So you'll see that it can really be everything from quite a small matter to quite a huge matter. And often it's really something which is disrupting someone's life, such as their immigration status.
Right. People usually are very wary of going to authorities to complain. So what do you want to say to people who don't openly want to come? They have grievances, but they shy away. So what will be your message to them?
Well, the first thing there are a couple of things, Navdeep, that I think are important. The first is that we are free. There is no cost. in coming to the Ombudsman. And that's very different to going to a court where you often have to pay a big fee to get into the court. The second is that I'm wanting my staff to be more and more open about the way we communicate, the sort of language we use, and I want us to be culturally appropriate. And by that, I mean the sort of language that, say, someone who has English as a second language is able to understand instead of that big Wellington bureau talk. The third thing that's important is we are secret. So you complain to the Ombudsman. I have an oath of secrecy, and so do my staff, that every investigation we do must be done in confidence and in secret. And that's to stop people being put in a position where someone finds out that they've made a complaint against someone else and say that person might comment unfavorably about the complaint. Now, we stop that by being very, very confidential and secret. And why I do this is because I know people are scared to complain, are scared to create a fuss, and often are just prepared to accept a decision and not protest. But we say to people, we're prepared to look at your case, and if we think you've been treated unfairly, we'll try and help you in a way which doesn't land you in any trouble.
Right. So I think that is very important because I come from India and there going to authorities is a stress itself. A lot of people see that we don't want to go to police or we don't want to get into things like that. Okay, my next question would be that how you just be talking about ethnic people and get your office getting to them. What are your office doing to get to the communities, like Indian community, and promoting that you should be open to come to us? And what are you people deliberately doing to come forward?
Well, firstly, what I'm doing with you is a good start when it comes to the Indian community. Navdeep, I just want to explain something to you, and just getting back to your previous question about the Indian community sometimes being afraid to make a complaint. You're right. I lived in Fiji for 2 years working as a judge in 2002 and 2003. And I did experience cases where the Indian community were worried that if they made a complaint, they'd receive a visit from the police or from an official who might question them as to why they were making a complaint at all. So I'm really sensitive to the fact that the Indian community might worry that there might be some, I'll call it consequence, and I do want to acknowledge that. So certainly reaching out to the Indian community in the way I'm doing it. Now, the other thing is social media. We are not just doing media statements through mainstream Radio New Zealand and places like that. I'm now using Twitter, I'm using LinkedIn, I'm using Facebook. I'm trying to reach channels so that people can pick up their phones and find something that I've said and ruled about and be better informed and better educated. So, for instance, I talked to you about some students who complained to me about the wrong visa decision, and we put that up on our website. And so if you search our website, you will come up sooner or later, usually sooner, with a couple of clues about work we've done on an issue that might be relevant to a complaint that a member of the Indian community has.
Right. Okay, moving on, when you give a decision to a complaint, how binding is that on the authorities?
Right. Well, under the Official Information Act, which is not one that your listeners will use hugely, look, because it is quite technical. But under the Official Information Act, when I make a decision, it is binding.
Okay.
When I make a decision under the Ombudsman Act, and that's where a lot of your listeners will feel that that's where they belong, it's not binding in the way that a court is binding. So, in a court, if a judge sentences someone or the deportation tribunal orders someone to be deported, or a court orders that someone take down some trees, you've got to, otherwise the police eventually become involved. With me, there's not that sort of order, but I have to say to you that the decisions that I make and the recommendations I make, they're usually given effect to. And I've been doing this job for nearly 6 years. Very, very rarely is a recommendation I make not agreed to. So I'll give you a recent one. It was Maclean's College in Auckland. And what had happened was there was a student who was playing with his iPad.
Right.
And he was getting frustrated and beginning to misbehave. And the teacher told the student off. And the student swore at the teacher. Shouldn't have done it, but swore back at the teacher. The teacher complained to the principal, who went to the Board of Trustees, and they expelled the student from Maclean's College.
Right.
The parents complained to us, and we said, that's a wrong process. You overstepped. You went too far. You should apologise, and you should have a process that operates very, very differently.
Right.
Now, by the time we'd finished, the student had left Maclean's College. But the point is, the decision we made and the recommendation we made were given full effect to. And normally in situations like that, they are. Now, that's important to me. There's no point in someone coming to me if I say someone should do something and they don't do it. I will lose credibility. So if people don't get on and act fairly quickly, they get a letter from me telling them off.
Oh, yeah. Moving on, there are, of course, in your experience, what has been the hardest decision to make? If you can recollect any decision that has been really, really hard to make.
There have been some cases that I think have really been ones that I've thought long and hard about. So I'll give you a couple of examples. There was, apart from the immigration ones, which we've had a lot of success with, there was a man in a publicised case in Wellington called Ashley Peacock. He had been locked away because he had mental health and intellectual needs, but he'd been locked away on his own for a long time.
Right.
And my staff said to me, look, this isn't fair. You've got to say something. You've got to lean on the district health board and get him proper living conditions. And we succeeded in that after a long time and a lot of trying. So we managed to move him to a place which was acceptable. And then another man was self-harming in prison. And self-harming means, mentally pretty unwell, taking out his frustration by injuring himself. So to cope with this, the prison used to put him on a tie-down bed. They'd stick him on a bed and put leather straps over his feet, hands, and body. And they did this for 16 hours a day for 36 consecutive days. And we said, you can't do that. That's wrong. You must surely have a better way of looking after your mentally ill prisoners. And they said, well, we have to. It's the only way we can keep them safe. But we kept on and we kept on. And in the end, the prison department banned the use of these beds, and they're no longer being used any longer. So sometimes the Ombudsman just has to make a stand and make it really clear that we are going to keep on until such time as people change. Can I just indicate one important thing to you? I think why we do get change is we're one of the few organisations that can table our reports in Parliament.
Right.
So when we have got a report, which we feel is important, it's tabled at the beginning of Parliament for the day. The Speaker reads it out. Often the media pick it up, and it will be on the front page of media. And people don't like it being exposed in the media to bad behaviour. So a lot of people will change because they want to avoid us telling them off in public.
Right. What has been your biggest motivation as on this position? What has kept you motivated? Of course, there are a lot of pressures, and how you deal with them.
It's actually being able to make life better for someone. So a lot of people get so frustrated that they can't seem to get a decision or they can't seem to get access to someone to get a decision. And when a decision's made, let's say it's unfair, a lot of people find it really hard to do anything about it, and they give up. And I think the biggest thing that we can do is people do take us seriously. And so when someone complains to us, and it might be one of your listeners, about local government matter that's annoying them, it might be anything from a rates overpayment that they can't get back. It might be an unfair water bill. It could be noisy neighbours. There are a whole lot of things that you can be inclined to give up on because it just seems too difficult to do anything about it. And often with just a phone call to an agency that we can make, we can get a change brought about quite quickly. So the answer to your question is we get about 16,000 people coming to us a year wanting our help. And a lot of those, we can change their life. It can be sometimes small. It can sometimes be big. It doesn't much matter to me. But if we've got a change for them, that's the thing that gets me up in the morning and makes me think that it's worth coming to work.
Right. And, you know, we are talking about 1st October, tomorrow. It will be 59 years when the position, the first chief Amsterdam was appointed. So how do you see the change from the last 59 years of this position and from where to where it has come up?
Yes, well, you're right about the date. Where's the time gone?
Yes.
So next year will be 60 years of the operation of our office. We'll, of course, celebrate that with a function in Parliament. I think that the office will continue to grow because Parliament wants us to do certain work more and more because I think we're trusted. And I'll give you an example. About 3 years ago, you may recall that the agency that looks after the care of many children in need of state care, it used to be called Child, Youth and Family Services, and it's now called Oranga Tamariki. And there was a lot of concern about how it was operating and whether it was looking after children in its care properly. So we were asked by the government if we would be prepared to take over part of the oversight function. And the government said, look, if you do it, you've got to do it properly. We don't want any half-heartedness. So we've created a brand new team. We've created another team to promote the use of Māori language and what I'll call tikanga, which means custom, within the office. Now that's about 8 or 10 people that we didn't have a year ago. So we're growing in those respects. As more and more people grow older and more people in aged care, more people will get dementia, more people will need our oversight to make sure they're being looked after properly. So that's going to be a continuing area. And then finally with MIQ, a lot of anger, concern, distress about people who can't get back to New Zealand at the moment. They complain to us about how they're being treated. A number of people don't like it, that they come into quarantine and have to pay for it. I think that need will be there for quite a long time. We will need MIQ facilities for some years. So I see us as needing to be well-resourced to do that. So you'll see we've got quite a lot of work coming up.
So in terms of MIQ, I see a lot of people complaining. So what is happening on that front? Are you going to have a report from you soon?
Yes, look, we're looking into it. We know that it's a really important matter for New Zealanders, and everyone, we make it reasonably clear that right now we are looking at all of the systems, all of the complaints, getting a big picture look on what we should do next. And you can expect some news from me on this within the next week or two.
Okay, that's interesting. And my last question would be, what is your last message to people who want to make a complaint and about your office? What would be your last message to them? That they should be open to coming forward and not scared?
Yes, you'll see behind me, underneath the name Ombudsman, is Fairness for All. And Fairness for All means all New Zealanders. The Indian community needs to be treated as fairly as the New Zealand, English based community, the Maori community, the Pacific, and all other communities needed to be treated with equal fairness. And you have that right. And the assurance I want to give is that if a complaint's made to us, even if your people struggle with the right language and struggle to say exactly what they really want to say, we will help that communication become a complaint that we can look at, and we will then look at it in the same fair way as we would anyone else.
Right. I think we need to, as a ethnic media, I think we need to make people more aware that don't fear and you are going to get the right decision, the federal fairness. So just go and get things sorted.
I think you're right. And good on you for doing this program, because you're doing your part in helping to bring to some people the awareness that the Ombudsman is here and that we are here to help.
I'm so thankful that I could actually get time from you. I'm really, really thankful, because I really wanted people to know that nothing to fear, because I know so many people who have different kind of problems, as you discussed, but they're just worried that I don't know what would happen if we will go to the authorities. I think this interview will shed some light on that and let people know that you are there for them.
Excellent. Well, good on you. And thank you for your lovely questions.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely day, sir.
I thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.